We're gonna make some eggs with bacon, just because I'm hungry, and we're gonna try to do it somewhat of a proper way. So I'm gonna start with cooking the bacon. Start with putting burnometer in. There we go, burnometer is in. Okay, let's start heating this pan. We need a little bit of fat in there already to get started. So I'm just gonna get a chunk of butter. The butter is warm, so that's a bit annoying, but oh well. And we're gonna start heating the pan. It's on 1200 watts. I have not cooked yet with this stove, so we will see what that does. So what I'm doing is putting a little bit of fat under the probe, because that will drastically improve the coupling. So, burnometer is rising quickly. We are right now at 55. We can start seeing some bubbles to form and the butter melting, which is what we would expect at this point. There we go. We are almost at 90. Which in theory, the bubbling of the butter you hear around 100, so that we're getting to 90 and we're starting to hear that is actually very normal. And that means that bacon we can already add. I like my bacon to be kind of crunchy, so I'm gonna aim for like a 190 to 200 degrees. We're at 120 now. So that we can get it crunchy, although it's with butter. So I'm not gonna let it go that high. I'm gonna stop it before. So what I'm seeing is that it's already at 130 on the screen. So I'm already gonna lower the stove a bit to 500. Wow, that's really coarse. Wow, that's annoying. Okay. That you don't have fine control at all. Wow. So we're at 140. I think I still need to raise it a bit. You can see that we're starting to get some browning at 150. But we can for sure go to 180. I'm also going to add some mushrooms because we have them. You can clean your mushrooms just with a towel a bit to get the dirt off. Usually that does a good enough job, and it has some benefits in terms of flavor. So I prefer that. And you're not gonna die anyway from a bit of dirt in there. So we are at 160, and that seems to be a pretty good temperature to let the bacon get crispy, from what I can hear. There we go, we have some mushrooms. Just gonna cut them once so that I have the nice mushroom shape still. And we're gonna only add those once our bacon is done, because otherwise it will make the bacon soggy again. And we want the stove to be hot when we add them, and actually quite powerfully hot, simply because otherwise we are not gonna get the mushrooms crunchy, we're gonna get them soggy and they're gonna lose their water. You want to effectively sear the mushrooms a little, from my point of view. So at 180 now, we kept rising, so I'm gonna turn it down a bit because we're getting too high. It's getting a nice crunch, but if it goes even higher than that 180, and it's actually going a bit, so I'm gonna just lift it up a little. The stove is gonna complain, but that's no big deal. It just detects that there is no pan, so it's not gonna try to heat it up. There we go, 188. The reason it still rises even when you lift it is that there is a lot of thermal mass. This pan specifically is a very thick one. So it can take a while for that heat that gets generated with induction basically on the bottom of the surface of that pan to reach up. Even with induction, which in theory shouldn't be the case, but in practice we can see that it still is. But we have plateaued now. And we have a nice hot pan, so I'm gonna add these guys. And what I want is that they are covered in a little bit of the fat, so I'm gonna move this around a bit and try to get them to touch the bottom. Again, trying to get them to sear a little. It's not that important that all of them touch, but I typically try to get at least quite a bit. And we have dropped down a bit, like you would expect. We are now at 175 instead of 185. That is still a good temperature for the mushrooms as far as I know. So we're gonna let that do its thing. And then we're gonna want for the eggs to lower the temperature a little. Because if you have eggs in a pan that is too hot, what happens is that your eggs cook too quickly. So you want to slowly make it creamy. And there also a bit of liquid from mushrooms can help, but you don't want too much liquid, so you first want to sear them. And we're getting a nice brown color. If I flip one that has been searing nicely, you can see that this has a crispy edge. That's exactly what you want. You don't want this to get just cooked but not crispy, because then the flavor doesn't stay inside. From my experience. Again, we aren't chefs. We're just trying to get along with cooking. We're staying nicely at 170. I'm happy with that. And now we wait. We're actually staying incredibly constant at 172, which is, I'd prefer to see 180, but if you look at this mushroom, for example, it's super nice and brown, so I can't complain. It's a good temperature. Crispy bacon, somewhat crispy mushroom. Now we're ready for the eggs. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lower this in power, and 500 is the minimum. That's a bit annoying because that's already quite a bit of power, but well. So I'm gonna put these to the edges a little and let the pan go to zero effectively a little. And I wanna drop it down to 120-ish. So we're gonna put this guy in. Because of the plastic here, you can just touch it. It's a little bit warm, but normally it's not warm enough to burn. It's fine. By the way, the tip right now is 45 degrees and we have a 25% humidity. Let's start with some eggs. Small trick I learned from a friend, shout out to Jeroen. If you hit an egg on the edge of a pan, you won't get a nice crack. If you hit it on the side, on a flat surface like a table, you will. So we've got a bunch of eggs here, right? I'm now gonna just start stirring. You don't want the yolks to be broken before you start stirring. You want low power and stirring continuously. And stirring this in. And with that, but you want it to be cooking very slowly. Because then you can get creamy eggs. And yes, we are basically submerging our burnometer, but because of the way it's made, nothing should stick too much to it. And actually, if you see at the bottom, I'm getting a bit of the proteins clogging up, then the pan is getting too hot. So we are right now at 80 in the liquid, and that is already on the hotter side in terms of amount of heat. So you just want this to go slow. You don't want to rush it. And if you've cooked your ingredients for a bit, they will stay a bit crunchy. Of course, they will get a bit soggy with the eggs, but it will still have some of the crunch. At this stage, I also like to add a bit of pepper and work it in. And believe me, this tastes completely different from normal scrambled eggs. Like this, it feels as if you added cheese or cream or something to them without actually having done that. And that's the beauty of eggs. There is so many ways to make eggs, and yet they taste completely different. And also in baking, you can use them in so many things. It's fun. There we go. I think this is done. So I'm just gonna lift this. Turn the stove off. Keep stirring a little because otherwise the residue heat will make them not cooked. This might look a little creamy still, but that's exactly what we want. Even though it looks that for some people that it might be not cooked, if you actually look at it, the proteins are cooked. You can see the texture, it is cooked. Of course, there's people that won't like this kind of texture, but I really do. There we go. Temperature is dropping rapidly now. We're at 60 something, so now it's not gonna cook that much anymore, so I'm gonna serve and say goodbye. If you want to know more about Burnometer, you can find more info on burnometer.com. And we are continuously developing this, that's why we have this test kitchen. And if you want to see us cook anything, please leave a comment below. Bye.